Good morning and welcome to Kristjan Byfield, who looks a little bit like an air traffic controller for Viking longboat. Bring it in, boys, bring it in.
Harbour's clear, come on in.
and I'm even more excited to welcome Anne Deckers to the Little Book of Proptech. The reason I'm so excited to welcome Anne is that
everyone's bored of talking to me.
We've seen too much of Kristjan recently. He's everywhere. I saw him yesterday. He's, to be fair, he mentions me a fair lot, which is, I'm happy with that. But Anne, you don't know this, but you and I share a moment together, which, I'm gonna. You know how the human body sometimes, the mind tries to forget the most traumatic incidents of your life. That's its coping mechanism. Now, I'd like to rewind the clock to December 2018, and there we are at the Agents Giving Ball, and I had just suffered one of the more traumatic incidents of my entire adult life.
Not as traumatic as it was for the audience, I think, Mincy.
Do you know what, Chris? I was thinking about this the other day. When I was about 24, I was hit by a car as I was crossing the road. It was going 60 miles an hour. It was just me in the car, and it was a horrible, horrible incident.
More enjoyable than your age.
I would rather go through that again than be on stage with Simon at that time.
Yeah, again, mate, speaking for the audience, I think any member of that audience would push you in front of that car rather than try to enjoy that performance.
But luckily, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, luckily, my memories of that night are very, very few. But my defining memory of that night is the vision of Anne Deckers, looking amazing, by the way. But she is looking on at me and Simon with...
the look.
She was just completely fixated. It was like bemusement. She'd never seen... I think what she got more enjoyment out of, rather than our performance, was... after the performance, I was clearly upset with Simon, and I think I was probably giving him a mouthful. And Anne's just sat there... and that vision of Anne has stuck in my head ever since, and I can't get rid of it. So today is like a cathartic process. It's just to release us all from that traumatic incident that we suffered together. So thanks for joining me.
It's my pleasure, and don't worry, I have been told I have a look that I can give people. It's the dead stare.
Ask any of the staff if they get the look.
Oh, the look. The look. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning of the story. It's May 2004. You have got a couple of computers, a small office, and just 3 months' worth of money. And you two crazy kids decide that the best thing to do with that money is to start an estate agency. How did you meet, first of all? How did you arrive at that decision?
Love at first sight, wasn't it, babe?
I was absolutely swept away by Kristjan when he first arrived at the estate agency, where we got to know each other in the Docklands. And thought of him as a typical cocky estate agent. So much so that it took me many years to get his wife to, I think, see a nicer side of me. When on my first meeting with her, I actually told her, when I first met your boyfriend, I thought he was a bit of a cock. It didn't go down too well. But like Kristjan likes to say, it's only arrogance when you can't back it up. And I very quickly learned that he could back it up. And so, we became quite a good team to work together. And it went from there. He always has these crazy ideas that he throws out there. And it was very much Kristjan who approached the idea of setting up base first. I think it was also because we knew that, where we were working, although we had a great fun and making good money, it was all a bit like working for the big crook. And it didn't have to be like this. So that's how it all started. And I'm happy to say that, about almost 20 years by now that I've known this man, that I've come to love him deeply. So don't ever judge a book by its cover. It's the lesson to learn.
He's easy to love, though. He's the minute you meet him,
most of the time,
he's a cuddly Viking. He's got time for you. He's not too full of himself. So it's fair to say then you took probably one of the worst examples of how estate agents are seen, and then you decide to set up your own agency in order to sort of counteract that and to do things properly.
Yeah, I think that Anne and I, like you said, it was an interesting relationship to begin with, that started off with a bit of friction, and then we just worked really well together. Anne was the lister. I was a super hungry neg. And she was an amazing lister. She'd go out, her conversion rate was like 80 to 90%. If she went in the door, 9 times out of 10, she was coming back with keys. And yeah, I hounded the poor woman. Literally, I would know her diary better than mine. And those were back in the days when I ran my applicant database like an absolute beast as well. So literally, like Anne would not get a breath in. She'd step in the morning, having us just raced each other around the North Circular to Docklands. We'd walk in the door and I'd literally be like chasing her to her desk, like, right, what vals you got this morning? What are you going to see? What is it? Oh, it's a 1-bed this. Tell them I've got 3 people. I want to see that. I want a 1-bed that. And I'd be calling her like 45 minutes into each val. I'd be like, have you finished yet? Are you still there? So how's it going? Have you got the instruction? Have you got keys? Can I bring someone there today? Is the landlord living there now? Can I bring someone in like an hour? And I was relentless, but it worked. We did a lot of deals.
And where had you been working before that? I mean, your estate agency career, because I know Anne's sort of intro into the estate agency world was different. Anne wanted a company car. I know that much because I've watched somebody else's podcast last night, by the way, which is amazing. We're not going to talk about that. But she wanted a company car, and estate agents seemed to have a Mini that, if you got trapped, you could sleep in it overnight. Yeah. But Kristjan, where did you come from? How did you arrive?
So I sort of fell into acting. I trained as a professional stage actor, worked in the profession for I trained as a professional stage actor, worked in the profession for about 2 years, and hated almost every living minute of being a professional actor. And really just fell into it by chance. It was, having spent 3 years going to private drama college, it was like, right, I don't want to go back to uni. I don't want to have to retrain. What can I chuck myself at that might be a bit of fun and has got a bit of money potential? And literally there was a recruitment company around the corner from where I lived in Muswell Hill at the time, and they had a poster in the window saying, negotiators wanted. Yeah. And they didn't actually place me, but I went in, had a chat, and they told me, what the job was. And I was like, this sounds like fun. Like, I've always liked property. My parents did properties up when we were growing up, and my dad loves his architecture. He's a watercolor artist, but does a lot of landscapes and buildings. And so I've always had a sort of interest in property. So it just seemed like, this should be fun, but it was going to be like, we'll do this for a year and 2, we'll put some money in the bank, and then we'll have another crack at acting. And yeah, that's not what happened really. I worked for an agency, a little startup agency. They'd been going about a year. I think I was their first hire in Islington. Worked for them for 6 months, absolutely loved it, and then had quite a bad motorbike accident. Which made me sort of reconsider things, but also left me at home for 6 months, getting back to full fitness, spending the money that I'd made in the previous 6 months. So then ended up looking for another job, but didn't want to go back to that tiny office, wanted to sort of step up, and ended up landing at the agency where I met Anne. So I had 6 months experience before I met Anne. We worked together for a year. And about 6 months into that year, we started hatching our plans to get the hell out of there and and do our own thing. But I mean, I think when I met you both, you'd been about 7 years. You'd been an agent for about 7 years. Is that right? 6, 7 years, something like that?
No.
Not that many?
No. I think when we met, I'd been an agent for about 3. I think the one thing to take away is that we were very young in our career.
We were very young, yeah.
Yeah, maybe the foolishness helped us to get through it.
Well, I think we very quickly bonded over, but what we bonded over starting an agency wasn't about money. Right, we were both actually earning all right where we were, and we could have gone and worked for pretty much any agent and earned a tidy sum, doing what we were doing. But I think what we merged over, as Anne sort of touched on earlier, and we won't go into detail, but the guy who we were working for, on the surface, the company looked fab. Behind the doors, he was pillaging his clients. Yeah, and tenancy deposits, all the very worst things that can happen in a estate and lettings agency, really. And we just what Anne and I bonded over was the fact that we just felt lettings was done badly. Either way you looked at it, we felt that landlords were shortchanged. Landlords, back those were the days when you were lucky if you got a coffee stained printed off tenancy agreement and a gas certificate. That was a comprehensive letting service in those days.
It's interesting that you say that, because in 2004, when you guys were just starting out, I had just landed in London as well, and I got a job at an agency in Islington. And previous to that, I'd worked in sort of Manchester, and we're like a sleepy town compared to what goes on in London. But the pace of the lettings market in London in general was just immense. To me, it was just an absolute shock. I'd never sort of shown somebody a flat on a Monday morning and been moving them in by Monday evening. There was none of that kind of crazy pressured turnaround, and holding deposits needed to be put down, otherwise you were losing that. And I'd walked into this world and my head was sort of spinning all over the place. It was, though, an absolutely crazy market, wasn't it? It was. I just remember it as being so busy.
It's a lot of fun. I mean, Anne and I felt we could do something a bit different. Like I said, we felt landlords were getting slightly shortchanged. We thought tenants were treated like absolute filth. Most agents, it was literally, you're just an inconvenience that pays me a lot of money in tenant fees. The company we worked for then, was it 2 weeks rent plus VAT at the start and end of every tenancy agreement?
And at renewal, that was the crux. It was like, I'll renew. It's 2 weeks plus VAT. Then I leave. It's
2 weeks plus VAT. Yeah, it was 2 weeks plus VAT whether you wanted to renew or leave. And our average rent was probably 350, 400 quid, I would say, at the place. So you're looking at like 800 quid plus VAT, so £960 at the top and tail of a tenancy agreement for the privilege of living in that property. So, but that would be fine if you got an amazing service. But the problem was tenants paid that, and it was like, I don't care. The general attitude was like, I just don't care. You're an inconvenience. If you don't take it, someone else will.
Can I ask you 2 other questions? If you were an actor before you became an agent, have we seen you in anything? Did you get like a bit part in the bill? Because most jobbing actors, if they make it to the bill, that was it.
No, I was a stage actor, mate. So I didn't really do much in front of the camera. I did do a couple of shorts, were just or not starring as anything. Didn't do any show. I did a production of Ben Elton's Popcorn, which is a brilliant show. So it's like a stage version, a satirical stage version of Natural Born Killers.
So can I make a suggestion? That the next time we're all able to get together and socialize again, and they're thinking of doing like an agents giving ball at Christmas, perhaps you could actually turn it into a panto. Because an estate agency industry, a property industry pantomime, it's got to be everybody wants to see Simon Bradbury dressed up as the Widow Twankey. Everybody. There's not a single person that won't pay money to see that.
Property, the musical.
Okay, and I think there's a lot of commonalities as well between being an actor and being an agent, because actually I caught your discussion yesterday with ICG, and you were talking about Michelle Gallagher and her use of virtual valuations at the time. And one of the things that struck me was, I think Chris Watkins had said something like, well, if you want to watch that, you watch it, she will give you all the lines. And I'm thinking, there is a certain element of what we do, particularly when you go out on value, and Anne, you probably found this, where you find yourself falling back into the same lines again, and it's a script that you've read maybe 100 times, and you're on autopilot by that stage.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. It very much depends on the person you meet. I personally see it more from the aspect of the psychology part. Like, I'm quite known to come away with the entire life story of the person I meet. I get them to open up quite quickly to me. And, there are different ways of doing that.
But you've never seen anything like it. The stories this woman comes back with from evaluation, it's like, is this some old family friend that you've caught up with? No, first time I've met them.
But that helps to break down barriers, though, doesn't it? Because if you take time to listen to their story, you're earning their trust.
Yes, exactly, and that is also why you can't always run off a script. You do have to have a script in that you want to, I think, share as much knowledge as you have in a very short period of time. And again, as with every business, it's to show what value you can bring to them, because they're probably going to see another 2 or 3 agents, and there's going to be different characters that coming forward. And I might not have been the agent who gave them the news they want to hear, but I will have told them what they should hear. So, it's making sure that they remember you, not just for the bad news, but also for the good.
I'm tremendously impressed by everything that you guys continue to do. I was amazingly impressed with, and I suppose I've always been impressed by you, the fact that you do focus on the tenant experience as much as you do the landlord. We are tremendously good in this industry at knowing, and it's partly due to the way that we view ethics in our industry, that you only act for one party, you cannot act for two, you can't provide a service to the buyer or to the renter because you're acting for the seller or for the landlord. And therefore, I think a lot of agents do treat tenants like a means to an end. And as another commodity sometimes. And if they have a pleasant experience along the way, it's only by accident mostly. But you guys have set out to really communicate properly with tenants. And I found that particularly with the story that Kristjan was saying yesterday, that at the beginning of the first lockdown, you communicated with all your tenant base and you said, listen, guys, we don't know what the future holds, and clearly some of you are going to have financial difficulties. It's just, it's a fact of life. Keep in touch with us, discuss it with us. Not all our landlords will be in the same position. We will see what we can do. And you've come out of this the other side with 0 rent arrears, which I'm not in a position to verify these statistics, but I would wager you are amongst a very, very, very small minority in the country of agents who are holding 0 rent arrears at the moment.
But it's again based on not being afraid of having those difficult chats, whether that is with a tenant, whether that is with a landlord, and having gained that trust over the years that you have worked for them. They know, the landlords, when we pick up the phone and say, listen, this is the situation. What can we do? Let's find a solution. That they also understand we have their best interest at heart. And look, we are very blessed. I have no doubt of that, as base, we are a short company in this situation. We have been running nearly 17 years. We have a very loyal clientele. I wouldn't want to be a young startup right now, for sure. And again, that then goes to say those landlords have been with us. The vast majority have been with us for almost the entirety of that journey. you know. So they are also in a position where they can take a punch a bit more than a first-time landlord who's just hit that.
Yeah.
But we've always been very diligent with our references. We've always relied, and look, this is the benefit you get of being a small agency. You can't do this at scale, but we always apply a level of sort of agent intuition. You know, there are those references where on paper they look a little bit wobbly, but actually, you know, having spoken and met those people, they're going to be fine. They're going to be lovely, and they've got a suitable guarantor. Obviously, we wouldn't go on a whim. You know, we wouldn't risk a client on a complete whim. But equally, you know, over the years, we've had those references that come back gleaming, and we're like, something ain't right. Something's not right here. You know, and we've gone to Alana and we've gone, look, we can't really put it into words, but can you trust us? Just let us find you a different tenant. You know, and you know, not only do we have 0 rent arrears now, but, you know, as we said, May, it's 17 years. We've had something like 5 major rent arrears in that entire time, you know, and I think 3 of those we've resolved without needing to go to court. We've agreed a surrender of tenancy. We've agreed a reasonable payment plan. And over a year, 2-3 years, that's sort of sorted itself out. And we've had 2 which haven't been resolved. And I think actually I'm right in saying that actually in both of those instances, once we did get rid of those tenants, you know, we would have liked to pursue the matter further, but as is so common in the marketplace, the landlord was like, look, it's done and dusted. They're gone now. I'm happy to write off that debt. It wasn't substantial. We're glad to write off that debt and just move on and chalk it up to a lesson learned. One thing I do want to add, though, Minty, on what you were saying previously about, you know, service levels and different experiences with different agents. And one thing we've always been very transparent about is London is extremely competitive and fast paced, but we're also very lucky. You know, our average letting fee is somewhere around £2,000. There are agents in this country who average that for a sales fee. You know, there are agents who get paid under £1,000 to do a let. Yeah. And Anne and I have always been very clear of, you know, we are very fortunate in that, you know, we get paid a substantial amount of money by our clients. Yes, you know, we work bloody hard for that and we do a lot for it, but the money we get paid gives us the luxury of being able to do that. You know, if we were getting paid £800 a let, we simply would not be able to do, so, you know, half of the amazing things that we feel, you know, we currently deliver our clients. There wouldn't be the scope. We wouldn't be able to fund it. So, you know, I am very clear on, we can't all do the same thing. You know, someone operating in a rental market where the average rent's £500-600 a month, they're just never feasibly going to be able to deliver the offering we are, because it's just not viable.
Well, that makes me feel a lot better, because if you move your chair out of the way, Kristjan, you've got all of those awards gleaming on the mantelpiece over there. And I always look at those awards and think, I haven't got me one of them. But we down, and I'm not saying this is the excuse for it, but we down here in the provinces, we might earn on a sort of our average letting fee, if we're lucky, may hit £400, and it's hard. Therefore, you sometimes need to do volume in order to get anywhere near to sort of breaking the sort of figures that you do. And so, I suppose in London, because the work is I'd like to say the work is more or less the same. You guys probably have to react more quickly because it's less sleepy, but in general. Fees are something that, as the marketplace has become flooded with agents, and I just find that if you were to go back 10 years ago on our patch here, we probably had half the number of agents that we've currently got today. And it's one of the loveliest things about our industry is there's no barrier to entry. Anybody can come into this, anybody can do it, but it also means that anybody that thinks that they can do it will do it, and then the competition increases, and it sort of drives down fees. And in doing so, I'd like to say not with us, but as a whole in the marketplace, it's also driven down service levels in some cases.
It's knowing what you're worth, though, And I think that only came with time. When we first started, you're eager to land the business and you are willing to cut fees. And, as you grow and you realize what you are bringing to those people and what service levels you're giving compared to the next agent, it's not being afraid to ask for that fee level, and to be willing to walk away. I think the fact that people keep undercutting fees is not really helping our industry.
No.
So know what you're worth, put in the framework, say, this is what I'm willing to do for this price, and take it from there.
Sound advice there. Sound advice. So you mentioned, Anne, before that if you wouldn't want to be sort of young kids with a startup today, but let's face it, you're not shy in terms of getting your hands dirty with new businesses, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But in 2004, okay, the marketplace looks very different. The two of you sat there, and literally you can only see 3 months ahead of you. But you decide that you've got almost nothing to lose and everything to lose all at the same time, and you go for it. And this sort of sense of self-belief and hoping, wishing, and praying, and some, I suppose, luck is the magic ingredients in this industry, right? You need just a little sprinkling of that every now and again, and you're here in this new brave world. And you decide to do it all again with a new venture. What's wrong with you?
I blame Chris.
What are you trying to prove?
I was going to say.
There's so many things in my life. It's the
yeah. Oh, you sharp. Look, there's many things I'll do for a shiny trophy, but I'm not sure I'd necessarily choose to open up a Proptech company to do that. But you have done, and you've done it in. I think you've been very much welcomed by the industry because you're trying to solve a very practical problem. So, talk to me about that problem and how the discussion between the two of you came about. What was that light bulb moment where you just looked at each other and went, "I think we've got something here"?
So look, we've been lucky to sort of dabble on the fringes of Proptech for a while. In terms of we were working on an idea not dissimilar to Fix Flow at the point when Rajiv walked in our front door. Look, a lot of it came out of necessity at the time. We were looking at how our business ran. A lot of our clients were international, which in London's very common, and that brings with it some very real challenges, primarily because of time zone difference.
Yeah.
And also for us as a small company, I think we quickly started to understand that actually, although we started when Anne and I first started this, it was like, oh, we're going to have 5 branches and X amount of staff, and there were these London-wide ambitions. Actually, quite quickly those scaled down, and we enjoy being a single branch operation. We enjoy the intimacy of our team, but with that again comes certain challenges. So, we dabbled a couple of times. We'd been working on a concept not dissimilar to Fix Flow when Rajiv walked in the door, but it was about solving a problem. How do we streamline our property maintenance issue? And Raj turned up and it was like, great, we don't need to do this. It sort of validates what we were going to build, but we don't need to do this. We were a much younger company then. I mean, that would have been a massive risk back then because we were still establishing ourselves as an agency. And then not long after that, we started using Dupix as an independent. I think we were like their 4th agent client or something that signed up with them, 4th or 5th client, something like that. And we went to them about property, what is now known as Property File. We wanted a portal for our landlords to access key accounts and documents and invoices and all this sort of stuff. And again, so we went through that journey through Dupix, through its PSG acquisition, through its Zoopla acquisition, and actually played a very big role in the letting side of that product, both the landlord portal and the tenant app. So we'd sort of had that grounding of, we knew that our instincts around these things were right, so it wasn't like we came to it 100% cold and had never even thought about this space. But all of those things came out of us analysing our business, us sitting down with our team and picking apart the business and going, what do you guys feel you're wasting time on? What tasks do you do that you're like, oh, why do I have to do this? Like, why can't they just access this document? Why can't, this is just, why am I having to send an invoice to a client that I know I've already sent to them 2 months ago?
Yeah.
So it very much came out of that sort of necessity. And then one naivety we did have, having never built a Proptech product, was that we didn't really understand fundamentally what the real costs of building one were. And Anne and I had a very frank chat in that we're both very much on the same page about, you hear these amazing fundraisers that people are doing. I think about the time that we were starting on this journey, or not long into that journey, Good Lord did their big £10 million raise very early in, I think about a year after they launched. And we'd always said that we could go that route, but it wasn't really our thing. We wanted to retain control of what we were doing. And at the time, we very naively, we'd gone to a developer, we'd gone to our dev team that we use now, and we'd give them a very light framework of what we wanted to do. And they were like, yeah, we should be able to build that for about like 30 grand. And we were like, great, great, we can build that. And even if no one takes it, for 30 grand, we'll just keep it for base, and that's fine. I mean, we would trip in marbles. We've now spent about 10 times that.
So basically, what you're saying is development teams are a little bit like builders. You call them in and ask them for a quote, and they go, yeah, probably get this done for about 10k. And then before you know it, it's grown arms and legs. You're in for double, triple that amount. And
you know what? That is the exact analogy I used with Anne as we started to scale this, because Anne kept on going, whoa, hold on a minute. This was going to be 30, and now it's 80, and it was going to be 80, and now it's 120. And I used exactly the same analogy. I was like, look, basically, you've got to think about it. We've basically gone to a builder and we've gone, how much to build a 3-bed house? And he's gone, that's how much I can build a 3-bed house for. And then we've gone back and we've gone, it needs to be a 1,400 square foot house with 2 receptions. How much now? Okay, cool. And then we've gone back and gone, yeah, but every bathroom has to have an ensuite, and I want mood lighting. And then we've gone back at the end and we've gone, we want a swimming pool and a walled garden, and
how much of that is okay? Well, let's be kind to the techies out there, if you like. How much is that you and I and Anne and people like us walking in going, we'd like it to do this because I know that Amazon does that and my Netflix thing does that, and we're just used to things working intuitively. And you walk in and you go, right, I'd like to be able to say, Alexa, sort out my post-tenancy deposit return, and bam, it's done. And a dev will look at you going, yeah, that's hours and weeks of programming. We don't really understand that space as much as they do.
Look, I think the complexity, talking to people who've done this journey before, and who are in the space now, the quality of product that we've built for the amount of money we've spent doing it, we've been told by multiple sources, we've done an amazing job. We've spent very little money. We've spent very little money for the quality of product we've developed. And it doesn't feel like a little bit of money to us because, like as I said earlier, it is completely self-funded by us. This is all come out of our pockets. We have no VC or hedge fund or big tech sat.
It's having a nice. It's extremely brave. And you know what they say. To make a small fortune in Proptech, you need to start off with a large fortune and work your way down. So initially at this stage, you're going to have sort of a high burn of cash flow and just really sort of ironing out the kinks until it sort of rolls out. The uptake. What's the uptake been like? Because I know you were very positively received at first, and I think you were I think when I first looked at it, it was the time when you had everybody in that fancy boardroom where you were doing all the talking again, Kristjan. All the big words.
All the big words. Our presentation. Yeah, I mean that was sort of our big reveal to the industry. But I think and there's what I'm liking. What's really nice now is there's a few other people, there's a few other agents out there on this path. You've got Kai from Keaton's with Area, and Michael from Knock Dayton with his agent response, and there's other bits out there. And I think what is really nice for agents is we all know what it's like seeing a product, and you'll be the same, Mincy. Like I've seen so many products over the years that the concept of the product is great, and it is genuinely trying to solve a problem. But what they've delivered from the functionality side of things is so basic, or it doesn't understand critical elements of how we all have to operate as agents, that although the premise is good, the reality makes it an unusable product. And look, going into this, we knew this end of tenancy space was going to be messy, because although fundamentally there's a framework to it and we all fundamentally do the same thing, we know every agent does everything slightly differently. And as letting agents, the processes and operations you put in place is part of your DNA as an agency. How you choose to do things, the order and the detail that you apply to those is very much
on a ladder, isn't it? If one of them's missing, you suddenly that's
exactly. And agents are, they're and often rightly so, are sort of really passionate and fixed about no, we do it this way because we believe doing this and then this and then this protects our clients from this, or delivers our clients this return, or whatever it is. So look, we knew coming into this that customization was going to be the key to making this a successful product. And in our eyes, that was quite simple. You just need to be able to swap the order of things around and the timeline things around, and it sounds so easy. And I think that is the thing that you're typically not allowed to say to a dev, is you're not allowed to ask a dev, can you just do this? Because there's very rarely anything just about it. But no, I think I was working out the other day, I think we've got something like 250, something like that, possible configurations that you can use our platform in.
Right.
And we wanted to make it completely customizable so agents can use a software product the way they wanted to, not having to sort of force themselves into the way a software works, or having to cheat the software to get it to do what they kind of want it to do. So we didn't want that. We know that agents want stuff to be branded. We know that agents want to be able to access the comms. So, right from the offset, our platform has something like 80 different emails it sends, depending on whether it's a landlord or a tenant and the journey they go on. We built our own email wizard. So an agent that signs up with us can go in, and if they want, they can customize all 77, 78 emails. So it is a completely unique and bespoke experience. But all of that takes time and money and effort. And that's what we've invested now. The nice thing that we're seeing now is each time we demo this with a client, the questions at the end of our demo are 1, 2, 3 questions, not 20 questions. When we train most of our agents up on this, typically we're training an agent once. We're doing a 1-hour training session with their company online. Yeah. And that's it. We're getting maybe 10 to 15 viable, legitimate support tickets over the year, which is like, first time I've done this type of tenancy, and usually it's advice more than training, or it's the first time we've had a tenancy go this journey.
That's testament to its usability, really, isn't it? In terms of the user experience, it must be therefore intuitive to people to use, for those agents to use. I mean, we are currently onboarding with a brand new CRM system.
Who are you going with?
Street.
Cool. Nice.
And what's interesting about it is that it's almost like the UI, the UX is what makes it easy to use. It's intuitive. It's sort of like we know we're not going to have to spend hours and hours training staff, because it's similar to other systems you may already be using online. In it's sequential. You click here, then you click there, and then it asks you, are you ready to do this, that, and the other? And it's those small sort of nuances, those small sort of changes that I see entering the industry now, in terms of so much is being put into looking at that user experience and the usability of a product, not just the mere functionality. It's actually how easy is it going to be for me to use it.
Look, great software's got to be intuitive. I mean, it was the phrase we kept using, the sort of line we kept using with our dev team from day dot was, we want to build a product that, as an agent, if I'm using the Depositary, I could, in theory, walk out into the street, pre-COVID, of course, walk out into the street, stop a complete stranger, bring them into my office, sit them in front of my computer, and they would be able to take a tenancy from start to end without knowing the job and without knowing the software.
Yeah.
That was our brief, is that you should be able to sit someone in front of a computer who doesn't even know what they're doing without any training, and they should be able to figure out how they get through that process in a compliant and professional manner. And that was the brief that we had on that. And look, for us as well, that takes time and investment, but for us as a business, that makes us a leaner business, because, like I said, training is a huge challenge for a lot of suppliers into the industry. The demand that places on resources, and staff are expensive. That's the bottom line. Decent staff are expensive. So if you've got to have a team of 5 people constantly training, constantly rolling, constantly updating the training, and et cetera, that's a lot of resources. What's more, if you've got a product that doesn't actually do what you say it does, or isn't quite as flashy as you make out, that's a sales challenge, because it takes a lot more resources to sell into businesses in the first place, and your churn rate's going to be high, because even if you land that sale, once those people are into that system and using it, there's no hiding. If you've told a client it does X, Y, Z, and it only does X, and then you're like, oh yeah, but we're rolling that out, and 6 months later, those functions, those features and functionality still aren't there.
It's not a pleasant conversation, but I think if you were to ask me what the single biggest change in the Proptech space is, it's the fact that you're now delivering products that are ready to use, that they're no longer being beta tested on. And I used to find, sort of, going back sort of 10 years ago now, and you will find that a lot of those products were, look, this is what it could do, it may do, it's in development, our guys are working on it, and here's a picture of what I might look like using it. Look how happy I am. And look
at this guy with his feet up on his desk, dreaming about the Bahamas beach.
He's carefree. He doesn't have to worry about deposit returns.
And you just need one more let a month to pay for it.
and lesson we had to learn was that starting an estate agency, because we had the experience, we knew we could start running with very little money. The Proptech company, we kind of was a journey where it took a longer time to develop it, because don't forget, yes, we have been live for just over a year. We have been working on the Depositary for a lot more years than that.
5 years.
And 5 years. Kristjan saying, the product works, we're using it at base, just get it out there, start selling it. And he kept saying, no, we need this, we need that. And it was very, very frustrating, but I have to agree with him now. He was spot on. And again, that is, in that way, we are able to keep it as a very lean team for the Depositary as well, because all that work ahead has been put in, so that now when it goes out, you don't need a massive team to back it up. Whereas if we had started from the beginning, pushing it onto the market, I don't know if we would be sitting here right now.
So that's interesting. You guys were not crazy keen from the beginning to just get in as many users as they possibly could. It wasn't about, let's get our money back in. We need as many people to be engaging with this. In fact, I think you really sort of dripped it out to the market, only to people that absolutely begged you for it initially, and then you've slowly grown from there. How many users are we looking at today, without giving away any trade secrets?
So last year we processed 2,000 tenancies. So I think we've got somewhere in the region of about 30 brands using the platform now, of varying sizes. I think the average managed portfolio sits somewhere around the sort of 1,500, 2,000 mark. But I mean, I think our smallest agent's got about 20, 30 units, and then our biggest agent at the other scale of things. We're hopefully got some bigger clients in the pipeline at the moment. And so I think that first year we were very proud of the product that we rolled out. But I'm a true believer that there's no such thing as a perfect product. So our product is always going to evolve, and Anne is very happy for me to say that over time the amount of development you do should shrink as you sort of as you hone down on finer and finer things. But yeah, I think I think a product should be constantly evolving, and what we did in the first year, it wasn't a beta, as you talked about. We were adamant about rolling out a quality product from the get-go, but we still know, particularly, my agency experience is primarily running base, and sort of 18 months experience before that, and a bit more experience, but fundamentally most of our experience is working in this very unique agency that we run that is not your typical lettings agency. So we knew we were going to learn stuff in that first year, both from other independents and how they like to work, but also trying to tap into the big agents at the upper part of the market. That fundamentally is sort of a business that neither of us have been involved in sort of from a high level. So we knew there was going to be a journey on that. And so we were happy the first year just for it to be agents who understand the value of adding these things into their business and are willing to try and sample and feedback. And so it's been a really rewarding year. We learned a lot in the last 12 months. We learned a lot in the first 3 or 4 months where we rolled out quite a lot of features very quickly. And again, that was a nice thing that agents like with us is, as we talked about, a lot of products talk about, oh yeah, we're going to be building that in the near future. And that's it. It's really dropped as a line just to sort of get you to back off. I think the nice thing with us was, straight from the get-go, we had agents come back going, this is awesome, but it'd be really nice if when we did this, there'd be an option, like we could have an option that it could do that. And then we'd very quickly validate that with other agents, because we can't build a bespoke platform for every agent. Our pricing model is £50 per branch. I mean, when I say per branch, we've basically per 300 managed units, you pay us a £50 plus VAT monthly license fee for the platform.
That's a real sweet spot, isn't it? Really, in terms of pricing as well. It's not something that it's not one of those products where you need to just sell another house or let another property to pay for it. It's actually more affordable than that. Yeah,
I mean, for your average agent, one let a year will pay for the thing. But we know we don't want to use those sort of taglines, but we didn't want price point to be.
You just did, and that's the only soundbite clip I'm going to be using. That's it now. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Yes, so yeah, but we've learned a lot the last year, and also, I've been banging the drum for about 10 years about this integrated community of products and services, and that was also something we wanted
about that. Community is a word that you use, and you are one of the biggest cheerleaders, the biggest, hairiest cheerleader I have ever seen in my life. The most beautiful one. The love letters that you have been. I like to think that this podcast series is a very long love letter to our industry, but your love letters that you've been writing open letters. Sometimes to Rightmove, sometimes to different, sometimes to government, sometimes to the industry as a whole. But you clearly care and love about your property community. My question for you is, when it comes to being part of the Proptech community, it's actually quite a friendly space, isn't it?
Yeah. Look, I think Proptech, much like agency, has gone through an evolution the last sort of 5 or so years, 10 years tops, but definitely the last 5. I think there's been a seismic shift in attitudes to one another. It's like you can be effectively competitors, maybe not necessarily direct competitors, but you can all be sort of competing for that slice of the agent pie or the slice of the letting pie, whichever side of the table you're looking at it from. But just because you compete with someone doesn't mean that you can't knowledge share with them. You can't talk about what works, what doesn't, what you're tackling as a business. You know,
you collaborate and listen.
Exactly.
You can throw down the rest of that.
Depositary is back with a brand new apparition. No, do not soundbite that.
That's getting soundbite today. Anne, I'm going to ask you a question. We're going to interrupt Kristjan for a second.
Do please.
Because I'm conscious we've only got a short amount of time left. So I want to ask you, in terms of personalities. I mean, I don't know you both tremendously well. I obviously see more of Kristjan online. He's like one of those, you know, like people bump into celebrities and they think they know them because they've watched every film they've made. That's how I feel with him. Yeah, but with you, I'm just wondering, what is are you different personalities? How does this business marriage work? And what's the key to maintaining a marriage for so long? Because let's face it, you've been partners now longer than most people manage to stay married. So tell me what your top tips are.
Well, we spend more time together than we probably do with our respective partners as well. I think the last year we have missed each other quite a lot because there has been working from home and there haven't been our exploits at night when we take the team out. Not that that happens very often, but when it does, it is great. So we have missed that. But indeed, you are absolutely right. A partnership as directors is very much a relationship, and that relationship you have to work at. You know, like I see him now as my best friend. I know that whatever happens, I can approach him, but we've had to work on that. And we've had to learn the hard way. You know, we are completely different personalities. We are different people in the way that we live our lives. And that is great for the partnership, because if we both were the same, there would only be one needed of us. We wouldn't need to pay 2 directors if we brought the same things to the table. And so we balance each other out, I like to think. You know, we're the yin to the yang kind of one another. And it always comes down. I overheard this actually, is what Kristjan recently said in another podcast. It comes down to communication. And if there is a breakdown in communication, that is when there is a breakdown in that relationship. So you have to keep talking to one another. You have to keep sharing your dreams, your aspirations, where you want to go, what you want to achieve. Also the things that you're not so proud of, things that you're struggling with, so that, you know, your partner can step up if it's needed. Don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And again, it's sometimes the hardest to ask for help from the people we're closest to.
Yeah, show vulnerability, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's what we have learned over all these years. I let him talk. He can waffle for the best of them.
You know what?
I'm biting my tongue so hard at this. I'm like, shut up.
He does it so well. He does it so well.
So I don't need to really add much. I just sit here, and I think, oh, maybe I should steer him. Next time I see him, I must put in a little drip here. Oh, maybe we should talk about that.
There's a beautiful clip that illustrates this so well. If anybody watched the ICG webinar yesterday, Ben Sellers, who I have a lot of time for, and I do love him very much. I think he's a very bright chap with a lot of good ideas. And the way it works on these ICG panels is it's like celebrity squares. They've got like 1 million of those little boxes there. There's a lot of speakers. So yesterday there must have been 9 of you, 10 of you,
something
maybe?
like that. Yeah, about.
And Kristjan's up there in my top right-hand corner, and he's talking away, and Ben Sellers is waving to Chris, trying to get his attention. And it's the best mime show you'll ever see, because he waves, he realizes that he's not going to get a word in, so he stops, he waits, you can see, he puts his hand up again and again, and this whole thing carries on. So watch it back, Kristjan. You have perfected what the US Senate now know as filibustering.
Filibustering, dude. I could filibuster the hell out of anything. Stick me on a podium, let me talk for 2 hours and roll in.
I love it, because generally what you say is all love and respect, and I think that makes it worth listening to be honest with you. I want to ask you some more questions, and then I'm going to let you go, because I know you're both really, early morning people. You love being up and about and dressed at this time. Sorry, Anne. I'm so sorry.
Okay, at least Anne only had to go down the stairs. I mean, not that I had to go far. I'm only 10 minutes from work, but my commute was a little bit further.
So my question to you is, what is your... Okay, so there's 3 here I'm going to throw at you. The first one is, what do you perceive as your single biggest challenge in business at the moment?
So I think with Base, I think the challenge is, as a small company, we're trying to, like as I said earlier, we love the intimacy. We love our little team, our Base family. We really, really enjoy and love our little network. So it's finding that balance of how do we keep that? How do we make the business a bit more efficient? We're constantly trying to make it a bit more efficient, but while still retaining who we are and what our clients love about us. Our clients love that personal service. So we're trying to digitize and automate what we do at Base more, or at least we're really looking closely at this now. But yeah, I think that for us is just trying to find that balance. Last year was a tough year. The business did well, but that was because a lot of people and Anne and our superstar Steve, who works for us. I mean, the two of them, for about the 3 months of summer, I mean, they worked insane hours. Largely because last year required a lot of hands-on stuff that really couldn't be automated. There was a lot of hand-holding, both with tenants and landlords last year, through the scary times, and where is the market going, and blah blah blah, and things that might have previously been an email or a 2-minute phone call, this time round were 5 lengthy phone calls. So that burden that. What was that, babe?
Which then still have to be backed up via email, because you have to keep those records. Like over the years, one of the main burdens have been the record keeping. Being able to, within seconds, retrieve an email that backs up what was stated, which, if you just had a phone call, unless they're recorded, obviously, would not be that easy. And that takes a lot of time. But it was also staying on top of the ever-changing compliance and legislation.
That's great.
The amount of webinars and
Does it strike you both as strange that even whilst we were in the middle of Corona Central in 2020, they were still trying to make legislative changes to our day-to-day? Did you not expect they would have said, okay, guys, look, you're clearly going to be struggling now for the next few months to keep on top of workload, tenant communication, landlord communication, and in many ways the remit was, we just want to keep people in houses for as long as we can, because we don't want a situation where this pandemic then causes homelessness. And yet they're still driving legislative change at the same time. To me, it was like...
But look, the tenant vote is a big vote.
Yeah.
Let's tell it how it is. The tenant vote is a big vote, and for parties like the Conservatives, who traditionally aren't the party of tenants, that is fast becoming the biggest sort of demographic, the biggest chunk of voters. That's it. And older voters are getting older. That's the very nature of that. So that demographic for them that was always a proportion of the population they could rely on is now not so reliable. And so, look, keeping tenants happy is part of that journey. And there's a lot of pressure coming from the other parties with initiatives, and the Conservatives are having to sort of run to try and keep up a little bit. Unfortunately, it does mean that we do get some knee-jerk stuff. I mean, I've said repeatedly, I think Anne and I fundamentally are advocates of regulation and professionalising of our sector.
Sure, yeah.
But then there does need to be a balance. I mean, I think many people, but I think many out there as well, feel the same, that all of this regulation is great, but actually the government just needs to take a little stop. They need to allocate some funding into proper compliance enforcement. The fact that we've got this tiny NTSEA, whatever the abbreviation is of the Trading Standards Estate Agency team. I think we've got a team of something like 5 or 8 people or something like that are policing the entire UK industry. I mean, that's just mental.
It's ridiculous.
And I think really personally, I feel that's where the government needs to go, right, to show how serious we are about all this compliance brought in. This is actually where we're going to put some money.
I think it also needs to sort of take a look at taxation and landlord taxation. Particularly, it's become a very toxic space for some landlords. And let's face it, not all landlords are made equal. So yes, that if you want to talk about the big bad landlords with portfolios of thousands, and they can afford to sort of take a view that they don't care, and they brush off bits and pieces along the way. But the majority of the clients that you'll be dealing with maybe have 2-3 units each, and therefore this is their life savings, this is their pension, this is what's going to put their kids through college. It's all of that. And
Anne and I were talking about this the other day, and I think the biggest kick in the nuts for landlords, I think recently, has been the change to mortgage relief.
Yeah.
I think fundamentally all the other stuff, I don't really think landlords can argue much about the regulatory compliance that's come in fundamentally. The gas and the electrics and the carbon monoxide and all this stuff.
It's long overdue, isn't it?
It's long overdue, and look, it needed doing, and that's all well and great. I don't like the property licensing scheme. I think fundamentally the fact that boroughs were allowed to roll out their own bespoke versions, I think was ridiculous. And again, policing that then makes that so much more convoluted. Fine, do property licenses, but it should be a single national framework, and that is what's applied.
Yeah.
And that is
there anyway. The legalities are there already to back it up. It's just that it's not being enforced, and the property license is just yet again another taxation of a landlord who already does it right.
Yeah.
Because the illegal bad landlords, it just pushes them further underground, but they still keep operating.
I just don't get the change to mortgage relief. I don't fundamentally understand.
Do you know? I saw it as a very simple. It was a shakedown for cash, and it was brought in at a time where you had a very left wing Labour opposition. And the more left-wing your opposition gets, the less they're going to complain when you say, we're going to tax landlords or we're going to make life harder for landlords. Because if anybody was in favour of it, it would have been a more left-wing leaning sort of Corbynite Labour stance would have been very much not on the side of landlords generally.
I think it's a piece of legislation that also, it's creating that them and us divide in the landlord market, because, data suggests that approximately half of all landlords don't have mortgages on their property.
Yeah.
So it's thereabouts. It's about a 50-50 split. So what you've instantly done is you've gone to an entire marketplace and you've gone, so this legislation is not going to impact half the market 1 penny.
Yeah, it's not.
And
fair.
the other half the market is going to decimate your returns.
Yeah,
and that's crazy. I mean, it would have been much better to say, look, well, let's, if you want to tax landlords more, okay, but let's keep the mortgage rate relief. Let's just dial up the interest a bit. If we feel making money as a landlord is too easy, or or that should be funneled back into other community projects. Fine, add an extra 5% to the income tax on it.
I was just looking at the famous faces behind Anne there. We've got Sean Connery,
Bob
Hepburn,
Marley,
we've got Elvis. Let me
see, Scarface. Scarface, top right.
Marley. Fascinating. No, but you're 100% correct, and that's why I always value your opinion. Tell me, guys, who in the Proptech space is really impressing you? What sort of products do you think will you look at and go, wow, that today is a company that's really sort of.
So I mentioned him earlier, Michael Nettleton from Knock Dayton. His agent response tool that he's designed primarily for lettings, but just to really funnel out the wheat from the chaff and inquiries. They've got quite a large portfolio, so they have an insane volume of inquiries come in. But I like the fact that they're taking to task this mantra that's been churned out for the last 5+ years of agents don't respond to half their leads, agents are crap. Why are you burning your leads?
He had a lovely way of calling it. He termed it industry dogma. I love that. Yeah.
And I think a lot of us at these industry events where that's been turned out, we've turned to each other and gone, seriously, how is it 50%? Because we all know there's those leads that fall through the net, but fundamentally we know that most agents will contact most leads at least once. But I think all of us know that there are those mysterious leads, and it's not a small number, that you'll get in and you'll call them and you'll leave 2, 3, 4 voicemails. You'll send a couple of emails. You'll send a text message and you get nothing. Yeah. Nothing. They don't even contact you to register, let alone book a viewing, let alone make an offer on something.
It's the ones that come in at midnight and sort of 1 a.m.
That mysterious, but it's quite a high number, we've always felt it's somewhere in.
How drunk do you have to be to go on Rightmove and start making inquiries at a lettings agency? I mean, I normally call all my ex-girlfriends before I do that. Work my way through all the things you don't do when you're drunk. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I've seen, we all do it. We all go on the property portals and feed our property porn fetish and look at, things that we aspire and like and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I can't say that I've ever been like, oh, I'll accidentally inquire about that property that I know I can't afford or I'm not interested in moving in. It is very weird, but I like the fact he's taking that to task. I like that. And I love that. I just like that agent-centric thing. And, you've talked about Street. I'm a big fan of Heather and her brother and what they're doing with Spectre and Street. And that's exciting to see where it goes. And I think the other thing is the Repit Foundation store, the Foundations Marketplace. I think that's still got to mature. I don't think people will start realizing quite how powerful that is probably for another 12 to 18 months as more and more suppliers build apps and go into that marketplace. But, it's interesting now wearing both the agent and supplier hats and talking to a lot of CRMs and talking to a lot of other suppliers. And, we want to integrate and partner with as many things as quick as we can. But with a lot of these things, there's big queues, even if fundamentally they're willing, they're like, great, yeah, we'd love to partner with you. But we've got basically you're going to like the end of an 18-month, 2-year queue of being pipelined, and it's like okay, and so those are serious challenges. And I think for the agents that's frustrating. I mean, as we touched on earlier, we're really looking at every part of our business and where can we dial up the automation and the streamlining within the business. And what I'm increasingly finding is actually, we're almost looking for that perfect solution. Yeah. It's very hard to find. If you find a CRM that has certain functionality you want, then it doesn't integrate with partners that you want to work with. And flip side, you find a CRM that integrates with the partners that you want to work with, it doesn't have some other core functionality that you need. And it's hard
to have it all. Yeah.
It's really tough, and I think we're sort of on the brink of a really exciting phase of synergy between agency and Proptech. And I think using your use of Proptech, which is basically the agent supplier market as a whole, whether you're tech or people. But I think, you know, we're getting there. I think the next year or two, as things like Streets continue to develop and evolve, and other similar players in that market space, you know, there's some great sort of new CRMs to the market that are really sort of shaking the marketplace up. And I'm in a few agent networking things, and it's interesting. You keep seeing the same companies mentioned time and time again. I know 1090 I've seen get mentioned by a lot of agents. Agents are loving that. Agent Hub, which I think is based off the back of Salesforce. There's a lot of people loving what that does. So, you know, there's some really interesting things happen. It's interesting to see how the next sort of year or two plays out in the marketplace. But yeah, I mean, I think for me, Repit and what they're doing with their foundations thing, that is very interesting in terms of if they can get the number of suppliers in there and that app store works the way it looks like it's going to work. Agents will really be able to have a sort of off the peg.
And I think it will actually buy their software a new lease of life, because let's face it, it ain't the shiniest, newest looking thing in the world, but if it integrated better with if it played well with other programs, then all of a sudden we could forgive everything else.
And look, I think that's what software companies have realized, that software is challenging. It's really difficult. Like I said, you have to constantly evolve, and how we build software now is different to how we used to. Most software nowadays is built in a more modular manner. And what that means is, you know, each sort of feature or functionality is almost sort of built in its own little building, for want of a better phrase. Whereas before, you know, a lot of the CRM systems that we're all using, the older ones, you built this one big behemoth of a software product. And so over time, you can only keep tweaking and adding stuff so much. There is no way to sort of reinvent that wheel. Whereas nowadays, you know, you can build a product that might have 5 different sort of core features that are all plugged into one another. But the great thing with that being is, in 5 years forward, if there's suddenly a leap forward in this tech, or, you know, like in banking, there's suddenly, you know, been this big swathe to open banking, so that opens new opportunities. Great, that sort of makes this part of our offering a bit obsolete. So we're going to build a new building next to that. We'll keep that one running. We'll build a new building. We'll plug that in, and that's going to be all singing or dancing with all the latest stuff. And then we can switch that off. And then our clients have still got this amazing sort of current state-of-the-art product, but it's not this sort of piecemeal of legacy stuff and old-fashioned stuff. And it's really, really clever. You know, it's really clever for the likes of Repit to basically go, look, we're just going to be your core database. We're going to be where all the really important data sits. Basically, all your client, your property records, and your people. We're going to hold that, because that is basically your entire business. But we're going to give you the keys to plug in as many or as few as solutions as you want that deliver that experience that you want. And I think that's really exciting.
So, Anne, given that you've got a fairly good handle on role models and icons behind you, you've very kindly given me an hour of your time, at least an hour of your time. We've gone over. Whose time would you like? If you could have anybody's time, who would it be?
Oh, that's a good question.
And then the same to you, Mr. Viking. If you could work out, it could be within the industry, it could be somebody. Do you know what? I'm going to expand it. It's just been Christmas. I'm still full of goodwill. Living or dead, if you want. You can tell me whoever it is you want to spend an hour with.
Oh, living or dead. Okay. Well, I think a very, very self-explanatory, if we go down the Proptech and technology and everything, would be Steve Jobs. To understand how you take a concept, build it out, stay the best at it, make it as user-friendly as Apple is, and keep just growing that business. Because like Kristjan touched upon, yes, we come into the Proptech journey from an estate agency background, so we know what the product needs to do. But at the end of the day, we are estate agents turning entrepreneurs. So we have a big learning curve ahead of us. So I'm sure that there's plenty of advice I could use from him.
That's a very decent choice. Kristjan, anything to add to that?
So I think sort of on a personal level, I never met my grandparents. I never got to meet my parents. They both sadly passed away before I was born. So on a purely personal level, I would love the opportunity to meet them, to sort of, you know, to know where you come from. You know, I've obviously heard stories passed down from mum and dad about the days of old, but yeah, I think on a personal level, I think having that connection with where you came from, and Anne had an amazing relationship with her grandparents, and particularly her Nana in particular, who said, was it last year she sadly passed away?
Yeah, last August I had to finally let her go, which was stuck with COVID. So
I think, you know, that on a personal level, on a sort of inspirational level, I don't know. I mean, I think something not business related, maybe like Martin Luther King.
Okay.
You know, what was that like, championing, you know, human and black people's rights in a time when it was, pardon my French, but fucking scary. And I'm not necessarily saying it's less scary now. I think there's still a lot of frightening things to that side of it. But I think at that time, when there was this brutal animosity towards people of any other sort of description other than white and Christian,
to the other, yeah, that's right.
You know, I think for me, I'd love to understand that. You know, where at what point in your life do you decide that's it? You know, I'm going to dedicate my life to
it's more than
tackling
that.
this.
I think from when I think about that, I mean, I watched over the past couple of days, I watched the JFK, that Oliver Stone film with Kevin Costner, and that I know a lot of that is conjecture and a lot of it is conspiracy theory, but when you look at the parallels from where we sort of were then, you had the brink of Richard Nixon coming in, and it was no accident that Martin Luther King, JFK, RFK, all these sort of figureheads who were fighting for a fairer world and better human rights suddenly started to disappear. So, and I saw certain similarities with what's going on today, but particularly if you look at Martin Luther King, I know we've gone off on a tangent here, guys, but this is the kind of show we run. Okay? But when you look at Martin Luther King, if I said to you, Kristjan, I'd like you to solve this small Proptech problem, you go, okay, right, fine. We need to do X, Y, Z, and in 2 years' time, I think we'll have it solved. When you look at Martin Luther King's challenge, which was to change a world that was so toxic towards people of different race, different color, most of us would have said, forget it. It's just too much for us to.
Yeah, it can't be changed. How do you take on a challenge that big?
Yeah, I'd love to know how you keep going in that, and that's Anne's superpower, by the way. I found out in the other podcast she did. Her superpower is keeping on going, just keeping on going to the end.
Keep on keeping on.
Perseverance. And on that beautiful note, I'd like to thank both of you beautiful people. You've got the best beard in the industry. She's got the best hair in the industry. I mean, look at it. It's pristine. It's amazing. I just want to reach out and touch both of you. I'd like to thank you for your time. I know that it's you don't normally do these things, Anne, and so for me, a really, really big thank you to you. And Kristjan, I know you'll do anything, man. You'll go to the opening of an envelope. So together. No, I honestly, all love. It's lovely to try and work with people that you do genuinely like and love, and I love what you're doing. And I want to encourage you both to keep doing it and keep being excellent and keep being, you know, a better class of human being that I see out there. You are leading the way. You're just you're fighting for tenants, for landlords, and you're fighting for the industry. So thank you on behalf of everybody. That is all.
Hey, buddy.
See you soon, guys.